I decided to surprise my wife with a gift at her office after she sent me a "I just got promoted" text. And when I entered her office, one of my wife's co-workers smirked. "Your wife is inside with the CEO," thanking him for the promotion. I opened the door and saw my wife and her CEO kissing passionately on his office couch. I left without a word, blocked all the cards, and changed the locks. But then something happened that no one expected. You know that feeling when you're about to surprise someone you love, and your heart's doing this ridiculous tap dance in your chest? Yeah. Well, that was me at exactly 3:47 p.m. on what I now call the day my life took a hard left into crazy town. I'm gripping this walnut jewelry box I'd been slaving over for 3 weeks straight. Hand-carved, sanded until my fingers were basically leather and polished to a shine that could blind a pilot. The thing was a masterpiece, if I do say so myself. And considering I usually have the artistic skills of a caffeinated squirrel, that's saying something. Clara had texted me about an hour earlier with news that should have had me doing victory laps around my workshop. I just got promoted for little words that meant her years of kissing corporate. But in working weekends had finally paid off. My wife, Clara Monroe, had clawed her way up the corporate ladder at Pinnacle Solutions like she was training for the Olympics of office politics. And now she'd made it. Senior Marketing Director, corner office, the whole 9 yards. So naturally, being the supportive husband who still believed in grand romantic gestures, God, what an idiot, I decided this was the perfect moment to surprise her at work. Show up unannounced, present her with this handcrafted symbol of my love and pride. Maybe even get some brownie points with her uptight colleagues who probably thought I was just some blue-collar schmuck who worked with his hands for a living. Pinnacle Solutions headquarters downtown is one of those glass and steel monuments to capitalism that basically screams, if you're not making 6 figures, you don't belong here. The kind of building where even the doormen look like they went to Harvard. I'm talking marble floors so shiny you could perform surgery using the reflection elevators that probably cost more than my annual income, and that weird corporate smell of expensive coffee mixed with crushing ambition. Walking into that lobby always made me feel like I was wearing a "I don't belong here" sign. But today, I had my secret weapon. That jewelry box and the confidence that comes from knowing you're about to make your wife's day even better. The security guard, who'd seen me enough times to give me the courtesy nod, waved me through without the usual 20 questions about who I was visiting and whether I had an appointment. That's when Eli Grant materialized out of nowhere like some office gremlin. Now, Eli's one of those guys who looks like he practices his smug expression in the mirror every morning. He's got that whole "I peaked in college and never got over it" vibe going on, complete with the kind of designer stubble that probably requires a team of professionals to maintain. Clara had mentioned him before, always with this weird tone like she was talking about a mosquito. She couldn't quite swat. He spotted me the second I stepped off the elevator on the 15th floor. And I swear to God, this dude's face lit up like he just won the jackass lottery. He sauntered over with this grin that immediately set off every alarm bell I didn't even know I had. "Well, well, well," he said, and I could practically taste the smugness dripping off his words. "Look who's here with what looks like a very thoughtful gift." His eyes locked onto my jewelry box like a shark spotting a wounded seal. "You know, your wife's inside with the CEO right now, thanking him for the promotion." Now, here's the thing about the way Eli said thanking. He put this little emphasis on it, this tiny verbal wink that made the words sound absolutely filthy, like he was sharing some inside joke that I wasn't quite getting yet. My stomach did this weird flip-flop thing, but I pushed it down because, come on, this is Clara we're talking about. My wife of 6 years, the woman who still left me little notes in my lunch bag. Yeah, she told me about the promotion, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Figured I'd surprise her. Eli's grin got wider, which I didn't think was physically possible. Oh, she'll definitely be surprised to see you. Then he just stood there watching me like I was some kind of entertainment, waiting for the show to start. I should have turned around right then. Should have listened to that little voice in my head that was suddenly screaming at volumes that could shatter glass. But no, I'm stubborn as hell when I want to be. And I'd driven all the way downtown in Friday afternoon traffic with this perfect gift. I was going to deliver it. Damn it. So, I walked down that hallway toward Victor Hayes' corner office. You know, the CEO's private sanctuary, where million-dollar deals get made and corporate dreams go to die. The hallway felt like it stretched on forever. My footsteps echoing off those stupid marble floors like a countdown timer. Each step felt heavier than the last, and that jewelry box in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed about 50 lb. I knocked once on the office door. Just once. A polite little tap that said, "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I've got something awesome to show you." Professional courtesy and all that. Then I turned the handle and stepped inside. You know how they say your life can change in an instant? How one moment can split your entire existence into before and after. Well, they're not kidding, because there was Clara, my wife, the woman I'd been married to for 6 years, sitting on Victor Hayes' leather couch like she owned the place. And she was kissing him, not some innocent peck on the cheek or accidental brush of lips. I'm talking full contact, hands in hair, get a room, level kissing. Like they were the only two people in the world, and someone had just told them the world was ending in 5 minutes. The jewelry box slipped from my fingers and hit the carpet with this soft thud that seemed to echo louder than a gunshot. Neither of them heard it. They were too busy exploring each other's tonsils to notice that Clara's husband had just walked into their little private celebration. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. I know because I counted them later, replaying the moment over and over in my head like some kind of masochistic highlight reel. 3 seconds of watching my marriage implode in real time. 3 seconds of feeling like someone had just ripped my chest open and showed me that my heart was actually made of tissue paper. Then I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I turned around and walked away. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting match about betrayal and broken vows, no throwing that jewelry box at Victor's smug face, though God knows I wanted to. I just picked up my gift, turned on my heel, and walked out of that office like I was sleepwalking. The elevator ride down felt like falling through space. 15 floors of complete numbness. Watching those little numbers tick down while my brain tried to process what I just witnessed. The lobby, the security guard's wave, the revolving door, all of it felt like I was watching someone else's life through a fog. And then I was standing on the sidewalk surrounded by the usual downtown chaos of car horns and rushed conversations and the smell of hot dog vendors, feeling like I'd just been pushed off a cliff and was still waiting to hit the ground. The jewelry box was still in my hand, this beautiful symbol of love and commitment that now felt like evidence of just how stupid I'd been. That's when it hit me. My marriage wasn't just over. It had been over for a while, and I'd been the only one too blind to see it coming. The drive home was like being trapped in some weird autopilot nightmare where my hands knew exactly what to do, but my brain had basically checked out and gone fishing. I don't remember hitting a single red light. Don't remember changing lanes. Don't even remember starting the damn car. But somehow I ended up in my driveway, staring at the house that suddenly looked like it belonged to strangers. You know that thing your brain does when it's trying to protect you from completely losing your where it just keeps replaying the same awful moment over and over, like a broken record stuck on the worst song ever written. Yeah, that was happening in high-definition surround sound. Director's Cut Extended Edition. Clara's lips on Victor's, her hands in his hair. The way she looked so completely comfortable. Like this wasn't her first rodeo in his office. Like maybe this had been going on for a while, and I'd been walking around with a giant clueless husband sign taped to my back. But here's the thing about shock. Eventually, it wears off, and what's underneath isn't pretty. What's underneath is pure concentrated rage mixed with a clarity so sharp it could cut glass. And suddenly, sitting in my driveway with that stupid jewelry box still mocking me from the passenger seat, I knew exactly what I needed to do. No confrontation, no dramatic speeches about betrayal and broken trust. No tearful arguments about how we could work through this if we just tried hard enough. Screw all that Lifetime movie. This was going to be surgical, clean, efficient. The kind of response that would make Sun Tzu proud. I walked into our house. My house as it was about to become, and fired up my laptop. First stop, our joint checking account, the one where my paychecks had been automatically deposited for the past 6 years. The one Clara used for her little shopping sprees and fancy dinners with clients, who apparently included her CEO. Funny how those client dinners made so much more sense now. Balance $47,382.15. Not bad for a couple who'd been saving up for a kitchen renovation. Well, guess what? The kitchen was about to get a different kind of makeover. I transferred every single penny into my personal account, the one Clara didn't have access to because she'd always insisted we keep things simple with just the joint account. Simple, right? Simple for her to clean me out when she was ready to make her exit. Transfer complete. New balance in our joint account. $0. But wait, there's more. Like some demented infomercial, I was just getting started. Our joint savings account, the one with $23,847 earmarked for a vacation to Europe that Clara had been planning for months. Vacation's canceled, sweetheart. Transfer complete. Another goose egg. Then came the credit cards. Oh, the beautiful, wonderful credit cards that Clara loved so much. The Visa with the $15,000 limit that she used for her work clothes, which apparently included lingerie based on some of the recent charges I was now seeing with fresh eyes. Canceled the MasterCard she used for gas and groceries. Canceled the store cards for Nordstrom, Macy's, and that overpriced boutique downtown where a scarf costs more than my monthly truck payment. Canceled, and super-anceled. Each phone call was like therapy. Yes, I'd like to cancel this card immediately. No, it's not lost or stolen. I just don't need it anymore. The customer service reps were so chipper and helpful, probably thinking they were talking to some guy doing a little financial spring cleaning. If only they knew they were helping orchestrate the most satisfying revenge plot of the decade. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. See, Clara had this thing about convenience. She loved having everything automated, everything seamless, everything handled by someone else so she could focus on more important things, like apparently making out with her boss. So over the years, she'd linked everything to those credit cards I just turned into expensive plastic rectangles. Netflix gone, Amazon Prime, Sayonara, Spotify Premium. Enjoy the ads, baby. That fancy grocery delivery service where she ordered $200 worth of organic whatever twice a week. Sorry, payment method declined. The monthly flower subscription that made our house look like a funeral home. Wilted her gym membership at that bougie place with the eucalyptus towels and complimentary smoothies. Time to find a new place to do those yoga poses she was probably practicing for Victor. And here's the beautiful part. I wasn't stealing anything. This was all my money, my income, my hard work paying for the lifestyle of a woman who'd been playing me like a fiddle while I danced to her tune like some lovesick puppet. Every penny I was moving had come from my paychecks. My overtime, my weekend spent fixing other people's houses so we could afford the life Clara wanted. The locks were next. Called my buddy Jimmy, who runs a locksmith business, and told him I needed a full rekey tonight. Emergency rates, whatever it took. Jimmy's good people. Doesn't ask too many questions when a friend sounds like he's been hit by a truck. He showed up around 8 with his van full of hardware and his no-nonsense attitude. "Locked yourself out?" he asked, though something in his tone suggested he knew this wasn't about lost keys. "Something like that," I said, watching him work his magic on the front door. "Need to make sure only the right people can get in." Jimmy nodded like that made perfect sense and got to work. 20 minutes later, I had a shiny new set of keys, and Clara's old ones were about as useful as chocolate teapots. The house that had been our sanctuary was now my fortress. That's when it hit me that I couldn't actually stay there tonight. Not because I was afraid Clara would show up. Hell, let her try to get in with her old keys, but because every corner of this place was infected with memories I wasn't ready to deal with. The couch where we used to watch movies. The kitchen table where we'd planned our future. The bedroom where. Well, let's just say I wasn't ready for that particular minefield. So, I grabbed a duffel bag and threw in enough clothes for a few days, my toothbrush, and that damn jewelry box because I still couldn't figure out what to do with it. Throwing it away felt like admitting defeat, but keeping it felt like torturing myself. Decisions for another day. Miles Carter's apartment was exactly 23 minutes away, and I knew he'd be home because Friday nights were sacred in Miles' world. Pizza, beer, and whatever game was on TV. Miles and I had been friends since college. Back when we thought we had life figured out, and the biggest decision we faced was whether to order pizza or Chinese food. Simpler times. I knocked on his door at 9:47 p.m., holding my duffel bag like some kind of domestic refugee. Miles took one look at my face and stepped aside without a word. "No." "What's wrong?" "No." "Are you okay?" Just a cold beer appearing in my hand, and a spot on his couch that felt like sanctuary. We sat in silence for maybe an hour watching some baseball game that neither of us cared about. The beer was cold, the couch was comfortable, and for the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe again. Miles didn't push for details, didn't offer advice, didn't try to fix anything. He just let me exist in the wreckage of my day without having to explain or justify or perform. Around 11 I finally spoke. "She's cheating on me." Miles nodded like I just told him it was raining. "What do you need?" That's why Miles is my best friend. No drama, no shocked gasps, no "I can't believe it" theatrics. Just a simple question about what came next. And the beautiful thing was, I already knew the answer. "I need to end this clean," I said. "No mess, no drama, no second chances." Miles raised his beer bottle in a toast to cutting the cord. We clink-ticked bottles, and I felt something settle in my chest. The rage was still there. The hurt was still raw. But underneath it all was something I hadn't expected. Relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months without realizing it. And now I could finally exhale. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork and all the ugly business of untangling a life. But tonight, I was free. Saturday morning hit me like a freight train filled with regret and stale beer breath. I woke up on Miles's couch feeling like I'd been run over by a cement mixer. And for about 3 glorious seconds, I thought maybe the whole thing had been some twisted nightmare. Then reality came crashing back like an unwelcome house guest who brought all their emotional baggage and decided to stay forever. Miles was already up, shuffling around his kitchen in his ratty Chicago Bulls pajama pants and making coffee that could probably strip paint. The guy's many talents didn't include brewing a decent cup of joe, but right then I would have drunk motor oil if it had caffeine in it. "You look like hammered shit," he said, which was Miles speak for good morning sunshine. "Feel worse than I look," I mumbled, accepting the mug of what could generously be called coffee. "What time is it?" "Almost 9. You've been talking in your sleep." That got my attention. What was I saying? Miles grinned. That troublemaker grin that had gotten us both in hot water back in college. Something about walnut boxes and CEO. Also, you called someone named Victor a corporate dweezil about 6 times. Corporate dweezil. Yeah, that sounded about right. But here's the thing about sleeping on it. Sometimes your subconscious works overtime while you're drooling on your best friend's throw pillows. Because as I sat there nursing Miles' industrial strength coffee, everything became crystal clear. This wasn't just about catching Clara in a lip lock with her boss. This felt bigger, more calculated. Like maybe what I'd witnessed wasn't some spontaneous moment of passion, but the visible tip of a much uglier iceberg. Clara wasn't the type for spontaneous anything. The woman planned our grocery trips like military operations and scheduled our sex life in her phone calendar with little reminder alerts. Romantic encounter, 9:30 p.m. Don't forget the good underwear. So, the idea that she just randomly started sucking face with Victor without some kind of master plan, that didn't add up. "I need a lawyer," I said, and Miles nearly choked on his coffee. "Damn, son, you're not messing around." "I don't think this was just about a kiss, Miles. I think she's been playing a longer game." Miles set down his mug and gave me that look, the one that said he was about to get serious for probably the first time since Bush was president. "You got someone in mind, or do you need a recommendation? You know anyone good?" Harper Quinn. The name hit me like a slap. Everyone in town knew Harper Quinn, even if they'd never needed a divorce lawyer. She was the kind of attorney who made other lawyers wake up in cold sweats. Local news had run a feature on her last year, calling her the Terminator in Armani after she'd taken some cheating investment banker to the cleaners so thoroughly that he'd had to move back in with his mother. "Isn't she expensive as hell? Brother, you just drained your bank accounts and canceled everything with Clara's name on it. I think you can afford the best." Miles grabbed his phone and started scrolling. "Besides, from what I hear, she's worth every penny, especially when you're dealing with someone who thinks they're smarter than everyone else in the room." That was Clara. All right, always the smartest person at any dinner party. Always ready with some correction about wine or politics or whatever random topic came up. It was cute when we were dating. Less cute when you realized she probably thought you were an idiot too. Miles found Harper's number and handed me his phone. "Call now. Saturday appointments mean she's serious about her work." Harper Quinn's office was in one of those downtown buildings that screamed, "I charge more per hour than you make in a month." All glass and steel, and the kind of intimidating architecture that made you want to straighten your tie even if you weren't wearing one. I'd thrown on my best jeans, and the button-down shirt Clara always said made me look presentable, which now felt like putting on a costume for a play I didn't want to be in. The receptionist looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Perfectly styled hair, makeup that probably cost more than my truck payment, and a smile that was professional without being warm. "Mr. Monroe, Miss Quinn will see you now." Harper Quinn's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who spent her days dismantling people's lives with surgical precision. Florida ceiling law books, a desk that could double as a landing strip, and diplomas on the wall that basically amounted to a PhD in making people regret crossing her. But it was Harper herself who really got your attention. She was maybe 45, with steel gray hair pulled back in a bun that looked like it could cut glass and eyes that seemed to see right through whatever you were thinking about serving her. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm enough to crack walnuts, and I got the distinct impression that she'd already sized me up and decided whether I was worth her time before I'd even sat down. "So," she said, settling behind her desk like a general preparing for war. "Miles tells me, you need someone divorced quickly and thoroughly. That's about the size of it. Tell me what happened, and don't leave out any details, no matter how embarrassing or irrelevant they seem. I've heard everything, and the devil's always in the details." So I told her everything. The surprise visit, the jewelry box, Eli Grant's smug little comment about Clara, thanking Victor for her promotion, the kiss that looked way too comfortable and practiced, my systematic financial dismantling of our joint life, even the part about the corporate Dick Weasel comment, which actually made Harper smile, a small predatory expression that suggested she appreciated a good nickname. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad with handwriting that looked like it could slice paper. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me like I was an interesting specimen under a microscope. "Any proof of misconduct?" she asked, cutting straight to the heart of it. I walked in on her kissing her CEO in his office. Door unlocked, middle of a Friday afternoon. Her tone sharpened like a blade being honed. "That's a gift for me in court. Adultery claims can significantly impact asset division and alimony considerations. But I need more than just your word. Any witnesses?" Eli Grant saw me coming down the hall, made some comment about Clara thanking Victor for her promotion. Harper made another note. "We'll need his statement. Anyone else?" Half her department probably knows something's going on. The way Eli acted, this isn't exactly a secret. Good. Office affairs are rarely as discreet as people think they are. She flipped to a fresh page. "Now, here's what we're going to do. I need you to bring me every bank record, credit card statement, and piece of financial documentation you can get your hands on. Pay stubs, tax returns, investment accounts, retirement funds, everything. If she's been planning an exit strategy, there will be paper trails." "What kind of paper trails?" "Hidden accounts, unusual spending patterns, money being moved around in ways that don't make sense for normal married life. If your wife is as calculating as she sounds, she's been preparing for this divorce longer than you realize. Women like Clara don't just have affairs, they have exit strategies." The way Harper said it made my blood run cold because it felt exactly right. Clara always had a plan for everything. Why would leaving me be any different? What are we looking for specifically? Harper's smile turned sharp enough to perform surgery. Evidence that she's been defrauding the marriage, moving assets, hiding income, using marital funds for her affair. If we can prove financial misconduct alongside the adultery, we're not just talking about divorce anymore. We're talking about damages. Damages. Think of it as getting paid back for her lies with interest. She stood up and extended her hand again. "Bring me everything you can find, and we'll turn your wife's clever little plan into the biggest mistake she's ever made." Walking out of Harper's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since yesterday afternoon. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation or second chances or any of that romantic comedy nonsense. Hope for justice. Hope for the kind of payback that would make Clara regret every manipulative move she'd made. This wasn't just about catching a cheating wife anymore. This was about exposing a fraud. And Harper Quinn was exactly the kind of lawyer who could turn Clara's own cleverness against her. Game on. You know how sometimes the universe decides to throw you a bone, right? When you think you're completely screwed? Well, Monday morning at 7:23 a.m. While I was sitting in Miles's kitchen trying to choke down another cup of his industrial-strength coffee and contemplating whether I had enough evidence to nail Clara's ass to the wall, my phone pinged with an email that changed everything. The sender was someone named Laia Torres. The name rang a bell from Clara's endless stories about office drama and workplace politics, but I couldn't place her exactly. Clara had mentioned so many coworkers over the years that they all blended together into this faceless mass of corporate ladder climbers and water cooler gossips. Subject line: something you need to know. Now, normally I would have deleted that faster than you can say Nigerian prince, because, let's face it, anonymous emails with cryptic subject lines are usually either spam or someone trying to sell you penis enlargement pills. But something about the timing felt different. Like maybe the universe was finally ready to stop pissing on my parade and start evening the score. I opened it. Hi, you don't know me, but I work with Clara. I'm Laia Torres from the marketing department. I know what happened Friday afternoon because half the office saw you leave Victor's office looking like you've been hit by a truck. I also know what's been going on between Clara and Victor for the past 3 months. And I think you deserve to know the truth. Can we meet? This isn't something I want to put in writing. Holy 3 months. Not some spontaneous moment of weakness or a recent development. 3 months of my wife playing house with her CEO while I was home, making her favorite dinner and planning surprise gifts like some kind of domesticated circus animal. I called the number she'd included in her email, and Laia picked up on the second ring like she'd been waiting for it. Mr. Monroe. Her voice was soft, nervous, but determined. Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. Why are you telling me this? Because Claire is my supervisor, and for the past 3 months, I've had to watch her parade around the office like she's already Mrs. Victor Hayes while you're probably at home thinking you've got a happy marriage. It's made me sick to my stomach. There was something in her voice that told me this wasn't about office politics or settling scores. This was about basic human decency, which apparently was in short supply at Pinnacle Solutions. What exactly do you know? More than you want to hear, probably. Can we meet somewhere private? There are things I need to show you. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop called Grind Coffee, one of those hipster places with mismatched furniture and baristas who look like they're auditioning for an indie band. Neutral territory, away from both our neighborhoods, and definitely away from Pinnacle Solutions. Laia Torres turned out to be nothing like what I'd expected. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and the kind of face that suggested she hadn't been corrupted by corporate yet. When she walked into the coffee shop at exactly 10 a.m., she looked around nervously before spotting me in the corner booth I'd claimed. Mr. Monroe. She slid into the seat across from me, clutching a manila envelope like it contained state secrets. I'm Laia. Thank you for meeting me. Call me Tom, and thank you for reaching out. This can't be easy. She laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Easy? I've been losing sleep for months watching this train wreck, knowing that somewhere out there was a husband who had no idea his wife was playing him like a fiddle. Tell me what you know. Laia opened the envelope and pulled out what looked like printed emails and some kind of small recording device. It started about 3 months ago, right after Clara got moved to the executive floor. Suddenly, she's working late every night, coming in on weekends, always in meetings with Victor that somehow required the door to be closed. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. No, but this does. She slid a printed email across the table. This is from Clara to her friend Jessica in accounting. It's from the company email system, which we're all supposed to know is monitored. But Clara apparently thought she was too smart to get caught. I read the email and my stomach dropped like a stone. Jess, Victor's finally making his move. 3 months of flirting and strategic positioning, and now he's talking about promoting me to senior director if I play my cards right. And between you and me, the cards I'm playing aren't exactly work-related. Winking face, the best part. Tom has no clue. He actually made me a jewelry box for when I got the promotion. Sweet, but so clueless. This is going to be easier than I thought. The date stamp showed it was sent 2 weeks before I'd caught them kissing. 2 weeks before my surprise visit. That wasn't really a surprise at all. It was just the moment I finally opened my eyes. "There's more," Laya said quietly. This was last week. The second email made my hands shake. "Jay, Victor and I had lunch today to discuss my performance review. LOL. He's basically promised me senior director plus a nice bonus if I keep him happy." The timing couldn't be better. Tom just finished paying down the mortgage with his overtime money from that big renovation project. Once I get my promotion locked in and milk this for a few more months, I'll file for divorce and take half of everything. He's too trusting to see it coming. By Christmas, I'll have a corner office, a fat bank account, and a CEO boyfriend. Sometimes life just works out perfectly. I had to read it twice because my brain refused to process it the first time. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about a calculated plan to use me as a financial stepping stone while she positioned herself for her exit strategy. Every late night, I'd work to pay down our mortgage early. Every weekend project I'd taken on to boost our savings. Every sacrifice I'd made so we could have a better life together. It had all been funding Clara's escape plan. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "It gets worse," Laya said. And I honestly didn't know how that was possible. I recorded a conversation last Friday morning, right before you showed up, actually. She pressed play on the small recorder, and suddenly Clara's voice filled our little corner of the coffee shop. Clear as day. "I'm telling you, Victor, this is working out better than I planned. Tom's been busting his ass with overtime to pay down the house, and he just deposited another $5,000 into our savings account. The sweet, trusting idiot actually thinks he's investing in our future together." Victor's laugh came through the speakers like nails on a chalkboard. "And he has no idea you're planning to take half of everything. Please." Tom wouldn't recognize a red flag if it slapped him in the face. He still leaves me little love notes in my lunch bag like we're teenagers. It would be adorable if it wasn't so pathetically naive. "What's the timeline?" "I want to get through the holidays first. Keep playing the loving wife while I lock in this promotion and let him finish paying off some more of our debt. Maybe take one last vacation on his dime. Europe would be nice. Then I'll drop the divorce bomb sometime after New Year's. By Valentine's Day, I'll be single, financially set, and ready to upgrade to a CEO boyfriend officially." Won't he fight the divorce? With what? He's so in love with me, he can't see straight. I've been setting this up for months, documenting his long work hours, making it look like he's never home. Creating a paper trail that shows our marriage has been deteriorating. His own work ethic is going to be used against him in court. The recording went on for another few minutes, but I'd heard enough. My wife hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been running a long con worthy of a professional grifter. Every loving gesture I'd made, every sacrifice, every moment of trust and intimacy had been weaponized against me in service of her master plan. Ela turned off the recorder and watched my face carefully. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "No," I said, and my voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. "I needed to hear that. thank you. What are you going to do? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Harper Quinn's number. I'm going to call my lawyer and hand her the best divorce case she's ever seen. Laya smiled for the first time since she'd sat down. Good. Clara's gotten away with this kind of manipulation for too long. It's time someone called her on it. As I dialed Harper's number, I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt since Friday afternoon. Certainty. Not just about ending my marriage, but about making sure Clara's clever little plan backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The kiss I'd witnessed wasn't the crime. It was just the evidence. The real crime was the months of calculated fraud, emotional manipulation, and theft that had led up to it. And now I had proof. Harper Quinn's voice when I called her sounded like Christmas morning, 4th of July, and winning the lottery all rolled into one beautiful, terrifying package. You've got recordings, actual recordings of her discussing financial fraud. Crystal clear audio of her talking about using my money to fund her exit strategy while she plays house with her CEO. Get to my office now. Cancel whatever you're doing today, because we're about to build a case that'll make legal history in this town. 30 minutes later, I was back in Harper's war room, watching her transform from intimidating attorney into something that resembled a shark that had just caught the scent of blood in the water. She'd called in her paralegal, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, who looked like she could organize the invasion of Normandy while simultaneously solving a Rubik's Cube. Play it again, Harper said, leaning forward as Elah's recording filled the office for the third time. Every time Clara's voice said something particularly damning, Harper would make a note with the intensity of a surgeon marking exactly where to make the incision. The sweet, trusting idiot actually thinks he's investing in our future together. Harper paused the recording. There, right there. She's admitting to intentional deception regarding the use of marital assets. That's textbook fraud. Is that enough? Oh, honey, we're just getting started. She turned to Sarah. Pull up the financial records he brought in last week. I want to cross-reference every transaction with the timeline she's laid out in these recordings. What followed was 3 hours of the most satisfying detective work I'd ever witnessed. Sarah spread out bank statements, credit card bills, and financial documents across Harper's conference table like she was assembling a puzzle that would spell out Clara's doom in 12-point Times New Roman font. Look at this, Sarah said, pointing to a series of credit card charges from September. Expensive lingerie purchases, high-end restaurants, weekend trips to that boutique hotel downtown, all charged to the joint account during the same period. She was telling Victor about her strategic positioning. Harper studied the statements with the focus of a jeweler examining a diamond. She was using marital funds to finance her affair. Every dinner with Victor, every piece of lingerie for their little rendezvous, every romantic gesture, all paid for with your money. What about this? I pointed to a series of transfers I noticed, but never questioned. Small amounts. 500 here, 1,000 there. Moved from our joint savings into an account I didn't recognize. Sarah pulled up the bank records on her laptop. Personal savings account opened 4 months ago. Sole ownership, Clara Monroe. Current balance, 14,47. She's been skimming, Harper said. And her smile could have powered a small city, creating a secret nest egg while pretending to build your future together. How much of this money came from your income? I did the math in my head, going back through months of overtime shifts and weekend projects. About 90%, maybe more. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Harper leaned back in her chair like she was savoring a fine wine. We've got adultery, financial fraud, hidden assets, and premeditated theft of marital property. Oh, and let's not forget conspiracy to commit fraud with her lovely CEO boyfriend, Conspiracy. Victor knew about her plan. He was actively participating in it. That makes him a co-conspirator in the financial fraud. Harper's eyes lit up like she'd just discovered fire. We can go after both of them. Sarah pulled out another folder. I did some digging into Pinnacle Solutions' employee handbook and ethics policies. Relationships between executives and subordinates require disclosure to HR and legal. There's no record of any such disclosure, which means Victor violated company policy while using his position to facilitate Clara's fraud. Harper was practically purring. This keeps getting better. We spent the next hour documenting everything. The timeline of Clara's affair mapped against her financial behavior. The pattern of marital funds being used to finance her relationship with Victor. The secret account where she'd been parking money stolen from our joint finances. The recordings that proved intent and premeditation. What about her promotion? I asked. She got senior marketing director right around the time this all started. Harper and Sarah exchanged a look that made me think they were communicating telepathically. Sarah, pull up Pinnacle's promotion guidelines and salary information. Already on it, Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. Senior marketing director position became available in August. Clara was promoted in September, which coincidentally matches the timeline of her first recorded conversations about playing her cards, right? So, she literally slept her way into a promotion using my money to finance the seduction. That's exactly what she did, Harper said, and it's going to cost her everything. Sarah handed me a legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. Here's what we've documented so far. Financial manipulation, $47,082 in joint account funds used without consent to finance an extramarital affair. Evidence includes restaurant receipts, hotel charges, and luxury purchases during the period of the affair. Hidden assets, $14,047 in a secret personal account funded through systematic transfer of marital assets without spousal knowledge or consent. Premeditated fraud. Audio recordings proving Clara's intent to use marital resources to fund her exit strategy while maintaining the pretense of a loving marriage. Conspiracy with Victor Hayes. Evidence of Victor's knowledge and participation in Clara's plan to defraud the marriage, while using his corporate position to provide financial benefits through promotion and bonus structures. Violation of employment ethics. Undisclosed relationship between supervisor and subordinate, resulting in financial benefit to the subordinate. Theft of marital property. Systematic removal of funds from joint accounts for personal use, while hiding the existence of those funds from spouse. This isn't just a divorce case anymore, Harper said, organizing the documents into neat stacks. This is fraud, theft, conspiracy, and probably a dozen other things I'll think of before we're done. We're not just divorcing her. We're going to make her pay for every lie she told and every dollar she stole. What kind of damages are we talking about? Harper smiled that predatory smile I was learning to love. At minimum return of all stolen funds plus interest, potentially punitive damages for the fraud. And given the premeditated nature of her scheme, we're going for full asset forfeit. She planned to take half of everything. Now she'll be lucky to leave with the clothes on her back. Can we really do that, honey? With evidence like this, we can do whatever we want. Clara thought she was the smartest person in the room, but she made one crucial mistake. What's that? She documented everything. Every email, every recording, every financial transaction. It's all evidence of her intent to defraud. She built her own case against herself and handed it to us on a silver platter. Sarah gathered up the financial documents and started organizing them into file folders. I'll have the formal filing ready by tomorrow morning. Full divorce petition with fraud claims, asset recovery, and damages. What about Victor? Harper's smile turned absolutely vicious. Oh, we're going after him too. Civil suit for his role in the conspiracy. Plus, I'll be having a little conversation with Pinnacle's board of directors about their CEO's creative interpretation of company ethics policies. Standing up to leave, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The intoxicating rush of being completely, utterly in control of my own destiny. Clara had spent months planning my destruction, using my own love and trust against me like weapons. But now the tables had turned, and her own cleverness was about to become the instrument of her downfall. One more thing, Harper said as I reached the door. Don't contact Clara. Don't respond to her calls or texts. Let her wonder what's coming. The longer she thinks she's gotten away with this, the more satisfying it'll be when reality hits. Walking out of Harper's office, I felt like I was floating. Clara wanted to play games? Fine. Let's see how she liked playing against someone who knew all her moves before she made them. Game on, sweetheart. Game on. The beautiful thing about letting someone hang themselves with their own rope is that they'll do most of the work for you. All you have to do is sit back, stay quiet, and watch them tie knot after knot until they've created their own noose. And Clara, well, she was about to give a masterclass in self-destruction. It started Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m. with a text that made me nearly choke on Miles' battery acid coffee. Where the hell are you? Your truck isn't in the driveway, and none of my cards are working. I stared at the message for a solid 30 seconds, savoring every letter like it was aged whiskey. So she'd finally tried to buy something and discovered that her plastic, fantastic lifestyle had been suddenly and permanently discontinued. Part of me wanted to text back something sarcastic like, "Welcome to the real world, sweetheart." But Harper's advice echoed in my head. Don't contact Clara. Let her wonder what's coming. So I deleted the text and poured myself another cup of Miles Industrial Strength wake-up juice. Text number 2 came 20 minutes later. Tom, this isn't funny. Call me back. We need to talk. The thing about Clara's version of "we need to talk" was that it usually meant you need to listen while I explain why you're wrong about whatever you think you saw or heard or experienced. She had this amazing ability to make you question your own memories, your own eyes, your own sanity. 6 years of marriage had taught me that Clara could convince a fish it was drowning and needed to buy gills from her premium aquatic respiratory solutions company. But not anymore. Not when I had recordings of her calling me a sweet, trusting idiot while planning to rob me blind. Text number 3 arrived during my lunch break. Tom, whatever you think happened, you're wrong. That wasn't what it looked like. Victor was just congratulating me on my promotion. Please call me. Oh, that was rich. Congratulating her with his tongue halfway down her throat. Yeah, that's totally how professional congratulations work in the corporate world. I'm sure HR would love to hear about Victor's innovative approach to employee recognition. I screenshotted that text and sent it to Harper with a message. She's starting the damage control campaign. Harper's response came back in under 5 minutes. Perfect. Let her keep digging. Every lie she tells now is another shovel full of dirt on her own grave. By Wednesday, Clara had moved into full panic mode. The texts were coming every few hours now, each one more desperate than the last. Tom, I know you're getting these messages. This is childish. We can work through this. It was just a mistake. I'll quit my job. We can start fresh somewhere else. You're being ridiculous. Marriage means working through problems, not running away. Tom, please. I love you. That last one almost made me laugh out loud. She loved me. She loved my paycheck, my credit rating, and my willingness to work overtime to fund her lifestyle. She loved having a reliable, predictable husband who would rebuild her kitchen while she was out playing tonsil hockey with her CEO boyfriend. But me, the actual person, she'd made it pretty clear in those recordings that she thought I was pathetic. Thursday brought a new development. Clara had apparently discovered that I'd changed the locks. I know this because Miles got a hysterical phone call from her at his work, demanding to know where I was and why I wasn't answering my phone. She sounded like a crazy person. Miles reported over dinner at this dive bar that served burgers the size of hubcaps. Kept saying something about how you'd lost your mind and were destroying everything over nothing. What did you tell her? That you were fine and she should probably call a lawyer. Miles grinned and took a massive bite of his burger. She didn't like that suggestion. I bet she didn't. She also asked if I thought you were having some kind of breakdown. I told her that from where I was sitting, it looked like you'd finally started thinking clearly. Friday morning brought the nuclear option. Clara showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of installing custom cabinets in some rich lady's kitchen when my boss Frank poked his head around the corner with an expression that suggested someone had just asked him to solve quantum physics. "Hey, Tom, there's a woman out front asking for you. Says she's your wife. She seems intense." Through the window, I could see Clara pacing back and forth in the client's driveway, like a caged tiger. She was wearing her power suit, the one she saved for important meetings and intimidation tactics. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, and she looked exactly like what she was. A corporate predator who just discovered that her prey had developed teeth. "Tell her I'm busy," I said, not looking up from the cabinet door I was adjusting. She said she'll wait. Then she'll be waiting a long time. Frank disappeared, and I could hear muffled voices from the front of the house. Clara's voice was getting louder, which meant she was getting more frustrated. "Good. Let her make a scene in front of my client. Let her show everyone exactly who she really was when she didn't get her way." She waited for 2 hours. 2 hours of pacing and checking her phone and probably working herself into a lather about how dare I ignore her when she was graciously offering to explain away my lying eyes. Finally, around noon, she gave up and drove away in that silver BMW that I'd helped her buy with my overtime money. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later. "Fine, be childish, but this conversation is going to happen whether you want it or not." That afternoon, Harper called with an update that made my entire week. Victor Hayes reached out through his attorney. Apparently, he wants to discuss the situation like reasonable adults and see if we can avoid any unnecessary unpleasantness. What did you tell him? That the only thing I wanted to discuss with him was the size of the check he'd be writing to cover his participation in defrauding my client. Harper's laugh was like music. His lawyer got very quiet after that. What does this mean? It means they know they're screwed. Victor wouldn't be reaching out unless someone had explained to him exactly how much trouble he's in. CEOs don't worry about affairs. They worry about fraud charges and board investigations. That evening, Miles and I were watching a baseball game when my phone exploded, with what could only be described as Clara's complete and total meltdown via text message. "You've lost your mind over what? A kiss? Are you serious? I've given you 6 years of my life. You're destroying our marriage over nothing. Victor means nothing to me. It was just work stress. You're throwing away everything we built together. I can't believe you're being this petty. Everyone thinks you've gone crazy. This is emotional abuse. I'm calling your sister. She needs to know what you're doing. You'll regret this when you come to your senses." 23 messages in the span of 40 minutes, each one more unhinged than the last. I screenshotted every single one and forwarded them to Harper. Her response, "She's having a breakdown. This is beautiful. Keep ignoring her. The more desperate she gets, the more mistakes she'll make. Miles read over my shoulder and shook his head. Damn, brother. She's really losing it. Good, I said, and I meant it. Let her lose it. Let her call everyone we know and tell them how crazy I am for being upset about catching her cheating. Let her explain to her friends and family why her cards don't work and why she can't get into her own house. Let her dig that hole so deep she needs a ladder to see daylight. The final text of the night came at 11:43 p.m. I know you still love me. We can fix this. Just call me. I turned off my phone and went to sleep on Miles's couch with a smile on my face. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix something that Clara had broken. I wasn't the one making excuses or adjustments or sacrifices to keep our marriage running smoothly. Clara wanted to talk. She wanted to explain. She wanted to fix things. Too bad. Her time for explanations had expired the moment I walked into Victor's office and saw her true face. Now she could experience what it felt like to be powerless, to have no control, to watch everything she'd carefully planned fall apart around her. And the best part, she was doing most of the work herself. The call came on Monday morning while I was eating what had become my standard breakfast of Miles' experimental coffee and whatever cereal hadn't expired in his bachelor pad kitchen. Harper's voice on the phone had that particular edge that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. And for once in my life, that someone wasn't going to be me. Papers are ready, she announced without preamble. Full divorce petition with fraud claims, asset recovery demands, and a civil suit against both Clara and Victor for conspiracy to commit financial fraud. It's a thing of beauty, Tom. Absolutely devastating. When do we file? Already filed. Now comes the fun part. Service a process. The question is, how do you want to deliver the news that Clara's little game is over? I'd been thinking about this moment for days, playing out different scenarios in my head, like some kind of revenge fantasy film festival. I could have the papers served at our house, except she couldn't get in anymore. I could have them delivered to her at some restaurant or coffee shop. But that felt too private, too easy for her to control the narrative afterward. Then it hit me like a lightning bolt of pure poetic justice. Her office, I said during business hours in front of her colleagues. Harper's delighted laughter came through the phone like Christmas morning. Oh, you beautiful, vindictive man. I love it. Public humiliation right where she thought she was untouchable. Can we do that legally? Absolutely. Process servers can deliver papers anywhere the recipient can be lawfully found. Her workplace during business hours is perfectly legitimate. Plus, given that her workplace is where she committed the fraud, there's a certain symmetry to it. I want to be there. That's not usually recommended. I want to see her face when she realizes that her sweet, trusting idiot husband just checkmated her in front of half her department. There was a pause. Then Harper's voice came back with what sounded suspiciously like pride. You know what? You've earned this moment. I'll coordinate with the process server. Friday at 2 p.m., the lunch crowd will be coming back from their fancy corporate lunches. Maximum witnesses. Friday couldn't come fast enough. I spent the week in this weird state of anticipation, like waiting for the finale of the world's most satisfying TV show. Clara's texts had slowed down after her Monday night meltdown, which probably meant she was regrouping, trying to figure out a new strategy. Maybe she thought I was cooling off, that I'd eventually come crawling back like I had after every other fight we'd had over the years. Poor, deluded Clara. She was about to learn that this wasn't a fight. This was a war, and she'd been fighting it alone while I assembled an army. Friday morning, I met with Harper one final time to review the documents. Seeing everything laid out in legal language was like watching Clara's entire scheme translated into her death warrant. Every lie she'd told, every dollar she'd stolen, every recorded word from her own mouth. It was all there in black and white, ready to destroy the carefully constructed life she'd built on fraud and deception. Divorce petition with claims for fraud and asset recovery. Harper read from the cover page like she was announcing the winner of an award. Clara Monroe versus reality. Spoiler alert, reality wins. The process server was a guy named Rick, who looked like he'd been doing this job for about 1,000 years. He had the kind of face that suggested he'd seen every possible human reaction to bad news and found most of them mildly entertaining. "You sure you want to witness this?" he asked as we stood in the lobby of Pinnacle Solutions. "Sometimes it gets messy." "I'm counting on it." We took the elevator to the 15th floor. That same elevator I'd ridden a week and a half ago, carrying a jewelry box and enough naive optimism to power a small city. Now I was carrying something much more valuable: the complete destruction of Clara's plans. The marketing department was buzzing with that post-lunch energy. When we walked through the glass doors, I spotted Clara immediately. She was standing near her desk talking to 2 other women, probably spreading some version of the story where I was having a midlife crisis, and she was the long-suffering wife trying to hold our marriage together. She saw me before I saw her notice me, and the expression that crossed her face was absolutely priceless. Confusion, then recognition, then a flicker of something that might have been fear before her corporate mask slammed back into place. "Tom?" she said, and her voice carried across the office like she was announcing my presence to everyone within earshot. "What are you doing here?" That's when Rick stepped forward with his manila envelope and his completely professional demeanor. "Clara Monroe. Yes, you've been served." He handed her the envelope with the kind of flourish that suggested he took genuine pride in his work. Clara took it automatically, probably thinking it was some kind of legal document related to a case Pinnacle was handling. The corporate world runs on paperwork, after all. But then she opened it and started reading. And I got to watch in real time as her face went through more expressions than a theater major's final exam. Confusion gave way to shock. Shock gave way to horror, and horror gave way to something that looked like pure, undiluted panic. "What is this?" she whispered. But her voice carried in the sudden silence that had fallen over the marketing department. Apparently, watching your supervisor get served legal papers was more interesting than whatever spreadsheets they'd been pretending to work on. I stepped forward, and when I spoke, I made sure my voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's a divorce petition, Clara, along with fraud charges and a civil suit for theft of marital assets. Thought you should know that your sweet, trusting idiot husband finally figured out your game." The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. She flipped through the pages, and I could see her recognizing the bank statements, the email printouts, the transcripts of her recorded conversations, all of it laid out in excruciating detail. Every piece of her carefully planned fraud exposed for the legal system to examine. "Tom, this is," she started, but I cut her off. "This is what happens when you underestimate someone. Sweetheart, you thought I was too stupid to see what you were doing, too trusting to protect myself. Turns out you were wrong about a lot of things." That's when Victor appeared, probably drawn by the commotion like a moth to a flame. He took one look at the papers in Clara's hands, then at the process server, then at me standing there with the expression of a man who just won the lottery. "What's going on here?" he demanded, trying to inject some CEO authority into his voice. Rick, bless his professional heart, had another envelope ready. "Victor Hayes, yes, You've been served." And just like that, Victor Hayes, CEO of Pinnacle Solutions, was standing in his own office lobby holding papers that detailed his participation in conspiracy to calm policies and about 6 other charges that Harper had dreamed up during her more creative moments. The silence in the marketing department was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop in the next county. 20-some corporate professionals were getting a front-row seat to the spectacular implosion of their supervisor and their CEO. And judging by the expressions on their faces, this was better entertainment than anything they'd seen since Janet from accounting got caught using the company credit card to buy her kids' baseball equipment. Clara was still staring at the papers like they were written in ancient Sumerian. "You can't do this," she finally managed. "Actually, I can," I said. "And I just did." "See, the thing about fraud, Clara, is that it's illegal. Even when you're really, really clever about it. Even when you document your plans and emails and record yourself bragging about how easy it's going to be." Victor was reading his own papers now, and his face had gone from its usual corporate tan to something approaching the color of old oatmeal. "This is ridiculous." "Well, fight this." "You do that," Harper said, appearing beside me like some kind of legal angel of death. "I'm looking forward to deposing both of you under oath." Clara can explain to a judge how she used marital funds to finance her affair while planning to defraud her husband. And you can explain to your board of directors how their CEO was sleeping with subordinates and helping them commit financial crimes. Clara's legs seemed to give out, and she sank into her desk chair like she'd been deflated. "Tom, please. We can work this out privately." "No, Clara, we can't. You made this public when you decided to steal from me while screwing your boss. Now everyone gets to see exactly who you really are." I looked around the marketing department, taking in all the shocked faces and dropped jaws. For anyone who's curious, everything's in the public court filings. Make for some interesting reading. Then I turned and walked toward the elevator. Harper beside me and Rick following with the satisfied air of a man who just delivered some of the finest legal papers of his career. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Clara sitting at her desk, still holding the papers that had just blown up her entire world, while Victor stood frozen like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming 18-wheeler. "How do you feel?" Harper asked as we descended. "Like justice," I said. "Justice feels pretty damn good." The elevator reached the lobby, and we walked out into the afternoon sunshine. Behind us, Pinnacle Solutions continued its normal business operations, except for the 15th floor, where 2 people were probably having the worst day of their professional lives. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt like I could breathe again. The high from watching Clara's world implode in front of her colleagues lasted exactly 3 days. Then reality set in with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the face. I was homeless, living on my best friend's couch and still technically married to a woman who'd spent months planning to financially destroy me. The house that had been our home for 4 years was sitting empty, locked up tight, but still full of memories I wasn't ready to face and furniture that reminded me of a life that had been built on lies. So, Tuesday morning, while nursing what had become my standard breakfast of miles, industrial strength coffee and existential dread, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to sell the house. All of it. Every stick of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration, every shared memory that had been tainted by Clara's betrayal. Sophie Lambert had been our realtor when we bought the place, back when Clara and I still believed we were building something real together. Sophie was one of those people who could sell ice to Eskimos while making them feel grateful for the opportunity. She had this way of talking about houses like they were living, breathing entities with personalities and destinies. which had seemed charming when we were buying, but now felt like exactly what I needed. I called her from Miles' kitchen, pacing around his tiny living room while I waited for her to pick up. Tom Monroe. Sophie's voice came through the phone like sunshine, and optimism had a baby. How are you? How's Clara? How's the house treating you? That's actually why I'm calling Sophie. I need to sell. There was a pause that lasted just long enough for me to hear the wheels turning in her head. Sophie had been in real estate for 15 years, which meant she'd seen every possible reason why people suddenly needed to sell their dream homes. She was probably mentally running through the greatest hits: job loss, financial trouble, divorce, death in the family, or the always popular. We realized we hate each other, and this house has become a monument to our mutual misery. I see, she said carefully. Is this a time-sensitive situation? You could say that. I need it gone fast, and I mean everything. House, furniture, lawn, ornaments, the works. I want to walk away with nothing but a check and the clothes on my back. Another pause. Sophie was definitely in therapist mode now, probably trying to figure out how to handle a client who sounded like he was either having a breakdown or making the most rational decision of his life. Tom, can I ask, is everything okay? Everything's about to be okay, Sophie. But first, I need to get rid of every reminder of the last 6 years of my life. Oh. And in that single syllable, I could hear Sophie's extensive experience with divorce sales clicking into place. I understand completely. Let me ask you this. Are we talking about a get the best possible price situation, or more of a get this done quickly before I burn it all down situation? Option B. Definitely option B. Sophie's laugh was warm and completely without judgment. Honey, you wouldn't believe how often I get calls like this. Let me tell you something. Keeping a house that makes you itch every time you look at it is like keeping a shirt that doesn't fit and reminds you of every bad decision you've ever made. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. And just like that, Sophie Lambert became my new favorite person. No questions about whether I was sure. No suggestions that I might want to wait and think it over. No platitudes about how time heals all wounds. Just practical, straightforward advice from someone who understood that sometimes you need to burn the bridge to stop yourself from going back across it. When can you come look at it? How about this afternoon? I can meet you there at 2, take some pictures, and we'll have it listed by tomorrow morning. 3 hours later, I was standing in the driveway of the house I thought would be my forever home, watching Sophie walk around with her camera and her tablet, turning our former sanctuary into a commodity. It was weird seeing the place through her eyes. Not as the home where Clara and I had planned our future, but as 2,400 square ft of sellable real estate in a good neighborhood with decent schools and a 2-car garage. Curb appeal is fantastic, Sophie murmured, snapping photos of the front yard I'd spent countless weekends perfecting. New roof, updated windows, mature landscaping. This is going to move fast. Oof. Walking through the front door felt like entering a museum dedicated to someone else's life. Everything was exactly where Clara and I had left it. Her coffee mug still in the sink from that last Friday morning. My weekend project notes still scattered across the kitchen counter. The throw pillows on the couch still arranged the way she liked them. It was like a snapshot of a marriage frozen at the exact moment it died. Nice hardwood floors, Sophie said, her heels clicking across the living room. Original crown molding, updated kitchen, good natural light. What are you thinking for price point? Whatever gets it sold fastest. I'm not looking to maximize profit here, Sophie. I'm looking to maximize closure. She nodded and made a note on her tablet. I respect that. Let's price it to move in this market. With this condition, I can probably have you 3 offers by the weekend if we price it right. We walked through every room. Sophie pointing out selling features while I mentally cataloged everything I wanted to keep versus everything I never wanted to see again. The furniture Clara had picked out for the bedroom gone. The dining room set we bought for dinner parties that never happened. Gone. The expensive artwork she'd insisted would elevate the space. Definitely gone. What about personal belongings? Sophie asked as we stood in what used to be our bedroom. Usually, I recommend staging with existing furniture. But if you want everything gone, everything, I said, I'll take my tools from the garage, my dad's old recliner from the basement, and maybe 1 or 2 photo albums. Everything else can go with the house or to charity. I don't care which. Sophie looked at me with something that might have been admiration. That's remarkably healthy, Tom. Most people torture themselves trying to divide up every last fork and picture frame. You're just letting it all go. The way I see it, that stuff belonged to the person I was when I thought my marriage was real. That person doesn't exist anymore, so he doesn't need his stuff. We finished the walkthrough in the kitchen where Sophie pulled out her phone and started making calls to her photographer, her staging crew, and what sounded like half the real estate agents in the city. This was Sophie in her element, turning emotional devastation into a smooth, efficient business transaction. Photographer tomorrow morning. Listing goes live tomorrow afternoon, she announced. I'm thinking open house this weekend, and with any luck, we'll have multiple offers by Monday. That fast, honey. You'd be amazed how quickly houses move when people aren't emotionally attached to every doorknob and paint color. Plus, your price to sell, the house is gorgeous, and the market's hot. This is going to be like throwing chum to sharks. As Sophie packed up her things, I took one last walk through the house, alone. Each room told the story of a different version of myself. The guy who'd believed in forever, who'd worked overtime to pay down the mortgage early, who'd thought he was building something permanent with someone who loved him. That guy had been an idiot, but he'd been a hopeful idiot. And there was something almost sweet about his naive optimism. But that guy was gone now, and his house needed to go with him. You okay? Sophie asked, finding me standing in the living room, staring at nothing in particular. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I'm ready to let someone else have their shot at happily ever after. Maybe they'll do better than I did. Maybe they will. But you know what? Your story isn't over yet. This is just the end of one chapter. Sophie locked up the house and handed me the key. Call me if you need anything. And Tom, you're doing the right thing. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that's already dead. Driving away from the house for what I knew would be the last time, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not sadness, not regret, not even anger. Just pure, clean relief. Like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for months without realizing it. And someone had finally helped me take it off. The house would sell. Some young couple would buy it and fill it with their own dreams and fights and mundane Tuesday nights. They'd repaint the walls and rearrange the furniture and slowly replace every trace of the life Clara and I had built there. And that was exactly what needed to happen, and because I was done living in a museum dedicated to my own stupidity. It was time to build something new. The house sold in 3 days. 3 days. Sophie called me Wednesday afternoon, sounding like she'd just witnessed a miracle, which I guess in real estate terms she had. Apparently, we'd had 7 showings, 5 offers, and 1 bidding war that ended with a young couple offering $15,000 over asking price because they had to have it. They're first-time buyers. Sophie explained over the phone while I sat in Miles's living room trying to process the fact that 6 years of my life had just been reduced to a purchase agreement. Just got married last month. Both have good jobs, pre-approved for financing. They want to close in 2 weeks. What about the furniture? They're buying everything, lock, stock, and barrel. They loved Clara's decorating style and said it would save them months of shopping. Sophie paused. Tom, they seem like really good people. I think they're going to be happy there. And just like that, my past was officially sold to a couple who still believed in forever. Good for them. Maybe they'd have better luck with happily ever after than I did. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday, which gave me exactly 9 days to figure out what came next. Miles had been great about letting me crash on his couch. But even the world's best friendship has limits. And I was pretty sure those limits didn't include a permanent roommate who talked in his sleep about corporate dick weasels. I needed my own place, somewhere I could start over without ghosts lurking in every corner, somewhere that had never heard Clara's laugh or seen her arrange throw pillows or watched her practice her. I'm just an innocent wife expression in the bathroom mirror. That's how I ended up walking around downtown on Thursday morning looking for apartment signs and trying to figure out what kind of life I wanted to build from scratch. It was weird being completely untethered from everything. No mortgage, no shared bank accounts, no one else's opinion to consider about where I lived or what I needed. Liberating and terrifying at the same time. I was walking down Harbor Street, checking out a loft space above what looked like an antique shop when I literally ran into my future. Well, technically, I almost ran into her. But the end result was the same. She was carrying a 40 lb sack of coffee beans, like it weighed nothing. Which should have been my first clue that this wasn't your average coffee shop owner. I was looking up at apartment windows instead of watching where I was going, and we nearly collided right in front of Harbor grounds. "Woo there, speedster," she said, adjusting her grip on the coffee sack with a grin that could have powered the entire downtown district. "You trying to start a one-man stampede, or just practicing your urban obstacle course skills?" "Sorry," I said, feeling like an idiot. I wasn't paying attention. No harm done. "But next time, you might want to watch where you're going instead of staring at Mrs. Patterson's apartment windows like you're casing the joint." She nodded toward the second floor. "Unless you're actually interested in renting from her, in which case I should warn you that she's got 3 cats. Plays Pula music at volumes that violate several noise ordinances, and her idea of modern plumbing involves a bucket and good intentions." I laughed despite myself. "Good to know. I'm actually looking for a place." "Well, you're in luck." She shifted the coffee sack to her other shoulder. "I've got a loft space available right here above my shop. 1 bedroom, decent kitchen, and the best perk in town. Unlimited access to coffee that doesn't taste like it was brewed with motor oil and regret." That's when I really looked at her. She was maybe 35, with auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looked intentional, and eyes that suggested she found most of life mildly amusing. She had the kind of face that made you want to hear her opinion about things, even if you didn't know what things yet. "You own this place?" Renee Calder, proprietor of Harbor Grounds, an occasional savior of caffeine-deprived souls. She stuck out her hand, which was surprisingly strong for someone who probably spent most of her day making lattes. "And you are Tom Monroe, professional furniture installer and recent expert on starting over." Oh. Something in her expression shifted, like she just placed me in a mental category labeled people who've been through some fresh start, huh? Something like that. "Well, Tom Monroe, why don't you help me get this coffee upstairs, and I'll show you the loft. Fair warning, it's not fancy, but it's clean, quiet, and comes with a landlord who minds her own business and makes a mean cappuccino." The loft was perfect, not because it was luxurious or impressive, but because it was completely, utterly neutral. White walls, hardwood floors, big windows that let in actual sunlight, and absolutely zero history. No memories lurking in the corners, no ghosts hiding in the closets. No emotional baggage crammed into the kitchen cabinets. Previous tenant was an artist, Renee explained as we walked through the space. Moved to Portland because apparently that's where artists go to discover themselves and develop expensive coffee habits. Left it in good shape, though. The bedroom was just big enough for a bed and a dresser. The kitchen had enough counter space for someone who didn't plan to host dinner parties. The living room had a view of the harbor that made you want to sit by the windows and watch boats come and go. "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it. "Really?" "Most people want to see 3 or 4 places before they decide. I'm not most people right now. I'm someone who needs a place that doesn't come with a history." Renee leaned against the kitchen counter and studied me with those eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Bad breakup, epic life implosion, the kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself and everyone else. Ah, one of those. She nodded like she'd been there herself. "Well, this place is good for starting over." The artist who lived here said it helped her figure out who she was when she wasn't trying to be who everyone else expected her to be. We worked out the details over coffee downstairs, first month's rent, security deposit, when I could move in. Renee's coffee shop was exactly what you'd want a neighborhood place to be. Mismatched chairs, local artwork on the walls, the kind of atmosphere that made you want to bring a book and stay for hours. "So, what's your story?" I asked, settling into a chair that looked like it had been rescued from someone's grandmother's dining room. Divorced 3 years ago from a guy who thought my coffee shop was a cute hobby until he realized I was making more money than his accounting firm. Renee's smile had an edge to it. Turns out some men don't handle it well when their wives are more successful than they are. His loss, damn right it was. Best thing that ever happened to me actually forced me to figure out who I was when I wasn't trying to make someone else happy all the time. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon crowd drift in and out. Regulars who knew Renee by name, students with laptops who bought one coffee and stayed for hours, business people grabbing their afternoon caffeine fix. It felt like a real neighborhood. The kind of place where people actually knew each other. "Can I ask you something?" Renee said as I was getting ready to leave. "Shoot, what happened to make you need to start over?" I thought about giving her the short version, the sanitized explanation that wouldn't make me sound like a complete fool. But something about her straightforward manner made me want to be honest. I found out my wife was cheating on me with her CEO while planning to divorce me and take half of everything I'd worked for. Turns out 6 years of marriage was just her long-term financial strategy. Renee winced. Ouch. That's not just a breakup. That's a betrayal with a business plan, pretty much. So now I'm selling everything, divorcing her, and trying to figure out who I am when I'm not being someone's mark. "Well," Renee said, standing up and extending her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Tom and Monroe. I think you're going to like it here." Walking back to Miles's place that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Optimism. Not the naive kind that had gotten me into trouble with Clara, but the realistic kind that comes from knowing you've hit bottom and are finally ready to start climbing back up. I had a place to live, a fresh start, and a landlord who made coffee that didn't taste like industrial solvent. For the first time since I'd walked into Victor's office and seen my wife kissing another man, I felt like maybe things were going to be okay. Maybe even better than okay. 3 months. That's how long it took for my divorce to go from filing to final decree. Thanks to Harper's legal brilliance and Clara's complete inability to mount any kind of defense against the mountain of evidence we'd assembled. Turns out it's pretty hard to argue innocence when there are recordings of you bragging about defrauding your husband while using his money to finance your affair with your CEO boyfriend. The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. Clara showed up looking like she'd aged 5 years and 3 months with a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Victor didn't even bother showing up, probably because his own legal team had advised him that every word he said in public was just more ammunition for the civil suit that was going to bankrupt him. Harper had prepared me for Clara to make one last desperate play for sympathy. Maybe some tears about how she'd made mistakes, but deserved a second chance. Instead, she just sat there looking defeated while her lawyer read a prepared statement accepting the terms we'd offered. Clara got nothing. No assets, no alimony, no claim to anything we'd built together. She walked away with her personal belongings and whatever money she had in that secret account, which after legal fees probably amounted to enough for a security deposit on a studio apartment somewhere. The civil suit against Victor was still pending, but Harper was confident we'd get a substantial settlement. Apparently, boards of directors take a dim view of CEOs who use their corporate positions to facilitate fraud schemes, especially when those schemes involve subordinate employees. Victor's golden parachute had turned into a lead balloon, and Pinnacle Solutions was distancing themselves from him faster than you could say fiduciary responsibility. But the real victory wasn't the money or the legal vindication. The real victory was sitting in my loft above harbor grounds on a Tuesday morning in February, drinking coffee that actually tasted like coffee, watching the harbor through my windows, and realizing I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. My life had become beautifully simple. I worked on renovation projects during the day, came home to a space that was entirely mine, and spent my evenings either reading books I'd never had time for, or hanging out downstairs in Renee's coffee shop, watching her work her magic with the neighborhood regulars. Renee and I had developed what could best be described as a friendship with possibilities. We'd started with polite landlord-tenant conversations about rent and maintenance issues, progressed to sharing coffee and conversation about everything from local politics to favorite books, and gradually evolved into something that felt like the foundation of something real. She never pushed for details about my divorce, never tried to fix me or heal me or any of that therapeutic. She just accepted that I was someone who'd been through something ugly and was working his way back to normal. In return, I tried to be the kind of tenant and friend who showed up when she needed help moving furniture or fixing the espresso machine that had a tendency to rebel against proper maintenance. It was easy, comfortable, real in a way that my marriage to Clara had never been. Even in the beginning, when I thought we were happy that Tuesday morning, while I was finishing my second cup of Renee's magic coffee blend and getting ready to head out to a kitchen renovation job, there was a knock on my door. Not the downstairs door to the coffee shop, but my actual apartment door. Which was weird because the only people who had access to the upstairs were Renee and the guy who delivered my mail. I opened the door to find a box sitting on the landing with a note attached. This was delivered to the coffee shop. Figured you'd want to deal with it privately. Or the return address made my stomach clench. Clara Monroe, followed by an address I didn't recognize in what looked like a not great part of town. Inside the box were photos, letters, and various mementos from our 6 years together. The detritus of a failed marriage, carefully packed and shipped like evidence from a crime scene. I carried the box downstairs and found Renee wiping down tables in the pre-opening quiet of her shop. She looked up when I came down the stairs, took one look at my face, and immediately poured 2 cups of coffee without being asked. "From the ex," she said, nodding toward the box. "Yeah, memory lane's greatest hits, apparently. Want some company while you go through it? Or would you rather do it alone?" "Company sounds good. If you don't mind watching someone sort through the wreckage of 6 years of lies." We spread everything out on the big table by the window, where Renee usually set up her laptop to do paperwork. Photos from our wedding, vacation pictures, love letters from when we were dating. ticket stubs from movies and concerts. All the little artifacts that accumulate when two people build a life together. Looking at it all laid out like that, I was struck by how normal it looked. How happy we seemed in the pictures, how genuine my smile appeared in photo after photo, and how perfectly Clara had played the part of loving wife and partner. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think you were looking at evidence of a real love story. "You look happy," Renee observed, studying a photo of Clara and me at some friend's wedding. I was happy. That's the weird part. I wasn't faking it or pretending or lying to myself. I genuinely thought we were building something real. Maybe you were. Maybe she was the one who was faking it. I picked up a letter Clara had written me during our second year of marriage when I'd had to go out of town for a week-long job. It was full of missing me and counting days until I came home, and all the things you'd expect from someone who actually loved the person they were writing to. "The thing that gets me," I said, "is that she was so good at it. If someone can fake this level of affection for 6 years, how do you ever trust anyone again?" Renee was quiet for a moment, studying the spread of photos and letters. "You know what I think? I think Clara wasn't necessarily faking everything in the beginning. I think she probably did care about you, maybe even loved you in whatever way she was capable of loving someone. But somewhere along the line, she started seeing you as a means to an end instead of as a person. When do you think that happened? Probably gradually. People don't usually wake up one morning and decide to become sociopaths. They start making little compromises with their conscience, telling themselves small lies, justifying increasingly shitty behavior, until they've convinced themselves that everyone else is just too naive to play the game as well as they do. I went through everything systematically, dividing it into 2 piles. Things that felt worth keeping and things that needed to go. Most of it ended up in the disposal pile. Photos where Clara's smile looked too perfect. Letters that now seemed calculated. Gifts that had probably been chosen for their strategic value rather than their sentiment. But I kept one photo, not because it was a good memory, but because it was a reminder. Clara and me at a company Christmas party about 2 years ago. Both of us smiling at the camera. She looked beautiful and happy and completely innocent. It was the perfect image of a woman who was already planning my destruction while posing as my loving wife. "Why that one?" Renee asked. "Because it's the best example of what a lie looks like when it smiles." I gathered up everything else and stuffed it back into the box. "This is going in the dumpster where it belongs." But Renee stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Hang on. Before you throw away 6 years of your life, let me show you something." She disappeared into the back room and came back with a small oak box about the size of a jewelry box, but rougher around the edges, clearly handmade. "I made this a few months after my divorce," she said. "I called it my real-life box. I only put things in it that represented genuine moments, authentic feelings, actual truth. It helped me remember that even though my marriage was built on lies, my life afterward didn't have to be." She opened it, and inside were photos of her with friends, ticket stubs from concerts she'd gone to alone, a pressed flower from the day she'd signed the lease on the coffee shop, a note from a customer telling her that her coffee had made their terrible day better. Everything in here represents who I actually am when I'm not trying to be who someone else wants me to be. She said, "Want to start your own?" That's when I remembered the walnut jewelry box, the one I'd made for Clara's promotion, the one that had been in my hands when I discovered her betrayal, the one I'd been carrying around like some kind of talisman of my own stupidity. "Actually," I said, "I think I have just the thing." I went upstairs and brought down the jewelry box, that perfect symbol of misplaced love, and naive trust. But looking at it now, I realized it wasn't a symbol of my failure. It was a symbol of my capacity to create something beautiful, to put time and care and skill into making something meaningful for someone I loved. The fact that Clara hadn't deserved it didn't diminish the craftsmanship or the intention behind it. "You made this?" Renee asked, running her fingers over the smooth walnut finish for her promotion, the one she got by sleeping with her boss. "It's beautiful, Tom. Really beautiful." I opened the box and put in the photo of Clara, my reminder of what lies look like when they smile. Then I added my loft lease because it represented my independence. A photo Miles had taken of us at a Cubs game last month because it represented real friendship. The business card Harper had given me after the divorce was finalized because it represented standing up for myself. Finally, I pulled out my phone and took a picture of Renee holding the box. Her face lit up with that genuine smile that had become the best part of my days. "What's that for?" she asked. "The first authentic thing that's happened to me in years," I said, and added the photo to the box. Renee looked at the photo, then at me, and her smile turned into something that made my chest feel warm in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said, closing the box carefully, "I only keep the real things." And for the first time since I'd walked into Victor's office and seen my wife kissing another man, I felt like my future was something worth building. This time, I was going to build it with someone who understood the difference between authentic and fake, between love and strategy, between a partner and a mark. This time, I was only keeping the real things.